Whoa, guys! Nintendo has hit an all-time low in the stock market. I suppose this proves that Nintendo Switch 2 is failing and that the company will go out of business and that they're going to lose the lawsuit to Power World. Of course not. This is one of the most ridiculous things I think I've seen in a long time. And it does need to be pointed out that all of the controversies we've been seeing regarding Nintendo Switch 2 over the past couple of weeks are completely off kilter and really make no sense. Like I saw a lot of people on Twitter complaining about Nintendo claiming that mods are illegal and going after Palworld for it. Mods are indeed illegal in Japan, just like emulation. So, this entire mindset that Nintendo is in the wrong for what they're doing or that the lawsuit is illicit falls completely apart. And these Western lawyer YouTube channels, like Legal Mindset, don't have the slightest clue about what they're talking about. And that's just one example. There are like just dozens and dozens and dozens of hot takes we've seen over the past couple of months. Like JT Smash just released a video like complaining about Nintendo laying off contractors. Like, who cares? But he's trying to make it out like Nintendo is screwing over their actual employees. Like, it's crazy how everyone hates Nintendo of America until suddenly Nintendo of America starts laying people off. Now suddenly they're evil. It's the double standard is very real and it's very very omnipresent in the Nintendo community. But right now we have this weird cope and this weird seethe that the Nintendo stock price has dipped and that Nintendo is just not doing well on the stock market. And as someone who's recently bought Nintendo stock, I can tell you that that is a complete lie. I know people who own Nintendo stock. I've spoken with them. It is doing reasonably well. And this is a good example, right? A perfect example of just how people will just bend over backwards to create a narrative out of whole cloth because like what is it dipping from? Like is it dipping from like this year, the last 5 years, the past 10 years? No, because if you look back in 2011, the stock was not as high as it was now. In fact, back in the day, like this was the stock now is higher than it was back during the Wii era. So this entire mindset that like the stock has dipped, like no, that doesn't mean anything. It's not some sign that the company is going under or that they're struggling. It is a complete cope. And we do need to talk more about just how ridiculous these kind of arguments are because we keep seeing them brought up. Grums keeps thinking Nintendo is going to fail, but the reality is Switch 2 is not only doing well, it's doing very, very well. And what that means is that we are seeing more and more people like start to get into Nintendo games, start to involve themselves with Nintendo products, and starting to become Nintendo fans. What we're seeing is the old mindset, the boomer mentality that Nintendo is for kids. It's dying a painful death. And people like Grums, people like JT Smash, like they've spent their entire careers in a lot of cases hating Nintendo and just writing them off and ignoring them. Don't believe them when they say they were huge Nintendo fans growing up because, this is where the term pretendo comes from. Is people pretending to be huge Nintendo fans in order to have credibility in this sphere, in this community. If Grums was such a huge Nintendo fan, he would have had a long history of developing unique games on Nintendo consoles, but he doesn't. And I'm sure he would have some kind of cope for that. that like, well, we were developing more expensive, interesting games at Blizzard. But the reality is Nintendo's titles are far more innovative, interesting, and popular than anything Blizzard has conceived in its entire history. It's interesting how in September 2025, we're still seeing people act as if Nintendo Switch 2 doesn't have a must have game, or how it's not that big of a success, and that nobody is really excited or even talking about this platform. And I can assure you that that is not the case. There is so much going on with this platform, so much going on with this console, so much going on with these games and with the company in general. It's a very good time to be a Nintendo fan. And yet, everybody is just doing everything they possibly can to prop up and worship something like Silk Song, a game that took 8 years to make, a game that doesn't live up to the hype, a game that has all these problems, a game that's just finicky and boring and just takes, way too long to get through, right? It's bloated, it's fat, padded. It is a fat chick. Like, Silk Song is a complete joke. Like, even comparing it to the average Nintendo game is completely laughable. Like, I was no fan of Bonanza. I thought Bonanza was kind of underwhelming. I don't think it's as good as most other Donkey Kong games, let alone like, the best platformers Nintendo's ever produced. But there's no denying that Bonanza is better than Silk Song, that it has better pacing, that it has better mechanics, that it has better bosses, that it's just more fun to play in general. There is no denying that Mario Kart World is better than Silk Song, that Metroid Dread is better than Silk Song. Like, there are just so many Nintendo games over the past decade or so that just far surpass anything Team Cherry has done or ever will do. And yet, we're supposed to believe that Silk Song, a game that released on Nintendo consoles, by the way, is somehow going to severely inhibit or stop Nintendo from being successful. It's laughable. It absolutely is laughable. And we do need to kind of address how these kinds of minor third-party successes are not going to stop the Switch 2's momentum going forward. It isn't going to be this industry defining thing. It's not going to become a major best-selling IP. It is something that appeals to a niche audience and has no real staying power outside of that niche audience. Like, that's just the reality of Silk Song, of Expedition 33, of Hi-Fi Rush, of like whatever slop the industry is trying to throw onto your plate. The reality is that Nintendo is winning, and there's just no denying it. Like, we're at the point where Sony and Microsoft are completely irrelevant. They are not competitive. They are not producing new, interesting games. Nobody's buying their hardware. And PC is too expensive to ever bother with when it comes to gaming. Nintendo consoles are just the definitive way to play video games right now. And yet we're still in this really obnoxious period where a lot of major players in the industry are really desperate to try and pretend otherwise, because they know the instant that video games are held to a higher standard, to Nintendo standard, their entire house of cards will collapse, because nobody will care about Crash Bandicoot. Nobody will care about Uncharted, Halo, The Last of Us. Like, the list goes on and on. Like, these IPs are not and never have been competitive with Nintendo titles, even though we've been assured by the gaming industry that Nintendo has been dead since the 90s. It is a complete and total cope. And that's all we've been seeing over the past couple of years. Everything we've been seeing in regards to what Nintendo is doing, their business model, the reception to their games, like, all of it basically is something that has been established to try and continue this narrative that Nintendo is not competitive, that they can't succeed, that nobody cares about or buys their products, when in reality, they are doing very, very well for themselves. I am very excited about the future of Switch 2. I am very excited about the upcoming year of for Nintendo products. Pokemon Legends ZA, I expect, is going to be the game of the year for me personally. Like, there's too much coming out in the foreseeable future for me to be anything other than excited. And it does need to be said more that I myself am extremely anxious to see the narrative regarding Switch 2 collapse, because this is the reason I do this. This is the reason I make YouTube content. This is the reason I am so vocal about gaming stuff, is that I am sick and tired of the best games that come out, Nintendo property, Nintendo games. I am so sick and tired of these games being written off and ignored by people who don't know the first thing about them. Like, all I want to do is come online and talk about games I like, and yet it is completely impossible because of people like this ruining it for fans everywhere. And it's not just me. Like, it's everyone that likes Nintendo products. There's this line that people love to point out. Nobody is talking about Nintendo. You know why that doesn't happen? You know why nobody talks about the new exciting like Nintendo games? You know why that happens? It's because you get harassed by PlayStation and Xbox fans. It's because you get harassed by PC gamers. Like, the instant you try talking about Nintendo, you get shouted down by people who don't know the first thing about them. And that's all that's been happening over the past 20 years, is that you shout down Nintendo fans, you think Nintendo fans don't exist, and then you're surprised when Mario Kart World is this huge success. That's all that's happening. Like, it doesn't mean the games are unpopular. It just means that no one wants to be antagonized for being a fan of this company.